Okay, I assume that if you've clicked on this video, then you've read or at least know of the Lore Olympus webtoon series, so I'm not going to really go into detail about it or what my thoughts were on reading Volume 1 for the first time, but this series was just not for me. And boy, do I share some criticisms on my other vid right here for you to check out if you're so curious. And while putting Lore Olympus on blast made for just a way funnier video, no matter how bad I thought the comic was, which was just my opinion, it still took time and effort and care, and I won't overlook that. So as a punishment/learning experience, I analyzed the tone, art style, and other fundamentals of what made Lore Olympus Lore Olympus, and did a special something that I've never done before. Lore Olympus meet Lore Valhalla. That's right, I followed in Kratos' footsteps and left the Greek gods behind in favor of Norse mythology. I said at the beginning of the year how I wanted to make more comics through one-shots just to get that feeling of accomplishment again from completing shorter stories, and hot damn baby, we did it. Now I want to share with you how I made Lore Valhalla, from the art and the characters and playing around with the different myths, all while paying homage to the look and feel of Lore Olympus. And if you're watching this and haven't read my comic Lore Valhalla yet, you lazy son of a bitch, go click the link in my description right now and read the comic for free. It should be an easy read, and just to be honest, you will get a lot more out of this deep dive if you actually know what I'm talking about. Okay, so now that I assume that you paused this video and gave my comic a proper skim, let's get into some of the fundamentals of making this parody comic. I did a decent amount of research on Lore Olympus before getting into any real work on my comic. Matching the visual tone and feel was probably the most crucial element about this parody if I wanted to pull it off right. And of course, make a good story and all that, but it needed to look and feel like Lore Olympus. Easiest way to capture that was to use the same or similar brushes that Rachel Smythe used to ink and color her comic. Thank you multiple Lore Olympus articles and Reddit threads for helping me find the best brushes to use, which are: for inking, I used Kyle's Inkbox Classic Cartoonist. It has that uneven, rugged texture to it that really helps make everything look papery and scratchy. For coloring, I used Kyle's Paintbox Gouache A Go-Go. Gooch? What the fuck is that word called? For lights and flares, I use two different brushes: Kyle's Paintbox Spatter and Kyle's Paintbox Supreme Spatter in Texture. Now with twice the spatter! Never found the exact font Lore Olympus uses, so I chose Ventura Edding as the next best thing, and hey, I think it looks pretty close. I also used it for the sound effects and sometimes wrapped a little white outline around them just to help things pop. Formatting was a toss-up between the original webcomic vertical scroll version or the printed version I read from the Volume 1 graphic novel. I really thought about going full webtoon to harness the parody, but as someone who's worked on zero webcomics and has no idea about proper vertical scrolling etiquette, I decided fuck that, learning all that is a beast of its own, and it would just take a ton of extra time and work when this was all just supposed to be a fun and quick way for me to get back into the rhythm of comic making. But I'll admit that if I went the webtoon route, then Lore Valhalla would have not only been my first one-shot and first comic of 2024, but my first webtoon as well. Damn, maybe I should have done that. I might have fucked up. But sticking with the physical book was just easier for me. There's a ton of debates, actually, on the quality of webcomics when being transferred to a physical print. A lot of people saying that they end up looking weird and janky as hell. But I thought Lore Olympus did a really good job. I don't know if there was a whole lot of rhyme or reason to how they did it, but here are some of the choices I clocked while reading that I applied to my own comic. Almost all the word bubbles stayed on top of the panels. In the vertical scroll version, you normally read what's being said first and then keep scrolling down to see the drawings. But with the physical version, it leaves a lot of white space and kind of makes everything float around. But I just used that to my advantage and did a lot of cool offbeat things, like making the panels scale down diagonally, or have the smaller panels overlaid on one another, or have the word bubbles take up place of where a panel would be. Doing that was super easy on my part because it kept the flow of the story moving with zero drawings needed. And if there's one thing I know about comic creators, it's if you can make a story with minimal drawings, hell yeah. So I just sort of had fun, throwing panels around however I wanted and picking whatever size panel I like. It was just a bunch of organized chaos. Now, Lore Olympus has an instantly recognizable style thanks to the colors, textures, and filters. So before I got into any Lore Valhalla concept art, I made sure to try out some practice drawings of the Olympus characters to get a feel for how they're drawn. The women seem to always have big round eyes and super dark thick eyelashes, making them super expressive and very feminine. The men have more angular eyes and a lot more sharp and bulky curves for their broad shoulders shoulders, their broad chins, their broad fucking deep-cut v-necks to show off their broad collarbones. But the geometric silhouettes, I think, were the key defining factor to the Lore Olympus style. The characters have no outline. The colors sit directly onto the page and only the details inside the character, like the hair, maybe some fingers, other clothing details, all of those retain their ink strokes. Which did make me start to work just a little backwards, because once I inked everything, I had to then go back and erase all their outlines. Like, I erased a good 60% of my inks. Super annoying, could have probably found a better way to do it. But damn, once it was done, it was really looking like something straight out of Lore Olympus. Aside from the characters, other stylistic things I picked up were the backgrounds usually held all their inks and lines, but blobbed as one color with some watercolor splotches here and there, making the backgrounds easy. As much as I think they enhance a panel or story, I'm not the biggest background guy. They can be a fucking mission and a half to get done, sometimes slowing down like an entire page. But Rachel Smythe found something in her Lore Olympus process. Oh yeah, she struck gold, baby. Look at this page. What do you notice? The entire focus is just the characters. The part you as a creator probably enjoys drawing the most. Couple that with minimal or monochromatic backgrounds, an absolute hell yeah. And I made sure to include some one-off stylistic moments, like the gray tone panels, the interesting shading on black jackets. Zeus's lightning was thin, brittle white lines with paint splatters randomly placed, which I similarly did for Thor. And random paint splotches outside the panels, taking over the white space and gutters, which I didn't really have like a system on how to do that, so I just sort of slapped them around as I saw fit. One of the biggest points I made in my Lore Olympus video was how all the designs of the modernized Greek gods just looked like Tumblr OCs. But now that I put myself in a similar position having to modernize Norse gods, I really needed to lock in and make sure those designs were banging. Or at least like passable enough for you to be able to recognize them as Norse gods reimagined. Not just a ragtag team of bland looking people. I drew a lot of inspo from God of War Ragnarok because they did thorough research when interpreting the myths. Like, remember how angry everyone was when Thor was first revealed? Red hair, dad bod, nothing like the sculpted, lean, blonde Chris Hemsworth Thor that Marvel spoiled us with for years. So Lore Valhalla Thor was obviously going to be orange to keep with that vibe. And as I look at his concept art again, he does look suspiciously close to one of my main characters from my Snowpocalypse graphic novel, Blood in the Land. I've typecasted myself into making all my characters red-haired, mustachioed men. I'm a one-trick pony. Sif was probably one of the most important designs to nail, as she is Lore Valhalla's lead protagonist. Golden, elegant, long flowing hair. Her little floof hair bangs always gave me Wendy's vibes. Loki was the easiest one to design. I made the least amount of tries on his concept art before locking it down. Dude's always been green based on Marvel and The Mask. Lore Valhalla Loki might actually be the closest thing I've made to a generic Tumblr OC. He just looks like some club rat Tom Hiddleston Loki. For Freya, I was going for a bit of a punk rock granola thing. Insane combo, I know. But Freya in God of War with her smeared mascara, war paint, what is that? I don't know. It gave me a dark goth vibe, so I wanted my Freya to be a little punk as well. Odin was a real important character to get right for a number of reasons. A big one being I had a whole roast segment on how Zeus and Lore Olympus was handled. So Odin had to have that feeling of power and leadership, and what screams that more than a rich and sleazy silver fox who owns a nightclub? His beard was interesting to play with because none of the Lore Olympus cast that I know of have beards for me to reference. So I just did my best trying to keep it sharp and angular to still fit with that geometric silhouette I was talking about. I almost didn't give him an eye patch. I tried broken sunglasses and a monocle as a modernized alternative before remembering eye patches still exist today and I'm stupid. He's also rocking some raven neck tattoos just to play further into that Norse origin. The script is probably the most important part of my comic making process because if it's not good, if it's not entertaining, if it's not engaging, who the hell would want to keep reading? I always write the story first, before the drawings, before the thumbnails. You gotta have the foundation set. Like, yeah, I could have fun drawing like a bunch of random Norse characters, but then to try and like squeeze them all into a story is like putting the cart before the horse. So story-wise, since Lore Olympus played around with the myth of Hades capturing Persephone, I obviously had to follow suit and use a Norse myth as my story's basis. Thor was right away going to be one of the main characters because it's Thor. Come on. Like, who doesn't love Thor? And Sif is his wife, so I started researching various myths of the two to see if there's any semi-romantic plots I could use to cater to the young adult audience. Remember, this is a Lore Olympus parody after all. But what was interesting is I didn't really find a whole lot of stories focusing on Thor and Sif together. Any stories with Sif had Thor. And while there were plenty of stories with Thor, not a whole lot of Sif in them. So that actually shifted the lead protagonist from Thor to Sif. And I thought that the strongest and most captivating story of hers was from, holy shit, I actually have not had to say this out loud yet. Skaldska Parmel. Skarsgård. The accent's just coming out. I'm not even trying. Duolingo Owl's quaking right now. What does it mean? I don't know. But a quick synopsis of the myth is, Loki cuts off all of Sif's long golden hair as a prank, enraging Thor. So as an apology, Loki quickly convinces the dwarves Brock and Sindri to make a wig out of woven gold for Sif and make Thor's hammer Mjolnir, which was cool. I had no idea that's how he got it. If you've read Lore Valhalla, which now I pray you've done because I've just spoiled big twist in my comic, you can clearly see where the original source material shines. But how did I modernize it, you may ask? The Greek gods have always been known for their lavish parties, and Lore Olympus plays with that a ton, so I wanted to stick to a partying and club setting as well. And after learning how Sif is associated with fertility and growth, mostly towards crops and agriculture, I'm thinking, well, wheat is a crop and wheat makes beer. Beer can be served at clubs. As dumb as that thought process sounds, it really helped everything else fall into place like dominoes. What happens if a club sells no beer at all? It's probably still a lit club, but I'd imagine there's a ton of pressure on the bartenders. You know how it is, where there's just a massive crowd flooding over the counter of the bar and the bartenders scrambling back and forth trying to make every mixed drink that screamed at them. Which, pro tip, that is the perfect time to ask the bartender to make an espresso martini. They can't get enough of that shit. Okay, so maybe the pressure on the bartenders is creating a slow service, which isn't very good for the club, right? I mean, the owner of the club will definitely not want to hear that. Sounds like a pretty good role for Odin, huh? Club owner, powerful status, puts pressure on the staff, which are his sons. Now we got a little family dynamic thing going. And when Thor sees merit in Sif's idea to try something different, and it actually works, it outshines the other son's work, Loki the promoter. You feel how the motives and reasonings just started like clicking with each other? My original ending for Lore Valhalla was slightly different, where I had Thor and Sif have kids and they all run around the brewery like it's Bob's Burgers. But by the time I thumbnailed everything and saw that the pages were climbing up to like 35 pages, when I was just originally gunning for like 25, maybe 30 max, I had to cut the kids and end things a little more abruptly. The kids weren't that important to the story, like maybe could have helped strengthen some of the themes of family and business that the comic was touching on, but I can live with the ending that I settled with. I just couldn't keep adding pages to it. I didn't want to end up making a 40 or 50 page one shot, because is that even a fucking one shot anymore? I just kept reminding myself that this wasn't a main series that I'm trying to sell or anything, just a fun, free comic to show off an interesting story and flex my comic making skills a bit. So once the story was written, the concept designs were drawn, everything thumbnailed out, it was comic time. I pasted the thumbnails onto their page, drew the roughs, inks, and then colored. A personal goal of mine while making this comic was to make it faster than I have in the past. It's different when you're drawing digital and you can like zoom in like 3000% and just see all the different little errors and ticks. But realistically, like no one gives a fuck about them. Not every panel can be perfect. I always think back to this interview from The Incredibles where they were worried about the teapots in a scene like being the same model as before, and someone said, "Who cares? Who would know?" And I'm thinking like, I wouldn't have fucking caught that, that's for sure. So I took a lot of the pressure off of myself and just immersed myself in the art in the process. And I think it really helped. I stopped obsessing over minor details and just stayed relaxed. And if there were times I got stuck on a background or something, I would just tell myself, I'm making this for fun. So just have fun making the comic. And I think that mentality and looseness really helped me barrel through creative issues and just get more comfortable with being faster in my comic making. You know, it's crazy. Like my Lore Olympus video had me giving it 2 thumbs down, so I decided to put myself in Rachel Smythe's shoes and make a comic of my own with a similar style and feel. And I gotta tell you, working on Lore Valhalla made me appreciate Lore Olympus more than I initially did. I had fun with the art style. The colors were quick and easy, yet vibrant and visually captivating. Even building a story off of a myth brought a lot of new and creative challenges and ideas that just broke me out of my comfort zone and pushed me to work with a tone and subject matter that I don't normally associate myself or my work with. I won't say that this means I'm going to start wanting to read Lore Olympus Volume 2 anytime soon, but I can confidently say, despite all the issues I had with Olympus's plot and character development, Rachel Smythe put in the work and stuck to it. And that in itself is extremely impressive and extremely inspiring. Alright guys, thank you for making it to the end of the video. I hope you learned something about making comics or how I tackled making a parody, and thank you to everyone that jumped over to my Patreon to read Lore Valhalla in the first place. If you haven't read Lore Valhalla yet, I kind of spoiled everything in this video, so you really dropped the ball, but read it anyways, please. Because I would really love if those that read could leave a comment on this video letting me know what they thought of the comic. Tell me how much you liked it, tell me how much you cringed. Just knowing that you've read what I made just butters my bread. And yeah, I'll see you guys real soon.